Hello and welcome to the Engineering Futures podcast. I'm your host, Paul Barker, and I'll be helping you explore the world of manufacturing by introducing you to successful people from across the sector. We'll touch on everything from personal experiences and professional challenges to contemporary issues affecting the sector, careers advice, and practical steps for employers who are looking to attract the top engineering talent. Join us as we get to know the people who have made a difference within the sector.
Okay, welcome to the latest episode of the Engineering Futures podcast. I've got special guest Steph Crane with us today to talk about all things education and T-levels. How are you, Steph?
Good, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's
No, no
honoured, thank
problem.
you.
Yeah. So we'll get cracking with things. So I like to start off by asking the guests what was going through your head as a 16-year-old. You know, when you were about to leave school, preparing for the next steps. What were you thinking those next steps were going to be? Was there anyone that was pushing you in a certain direction? Was there anything that you were thinking about doing but never got around to? You know, what was your mindset like at that stage?
So at 16, I think I was probably a little bit of a geek, if I'm honest with you. I was very committed to my GCSEs. I was really aware that I maybe wasn't the most able naturally. I'm a twin, so and she is very able naturally. She's a PhD doctor, so I knew I had to probably work a little bit harder. And so I was very focused on my GCSEs. And I think what was 16, it seems so long ago, probably excited about, moving on and seeing new things. And um, I was a pretty good golfer at that stage, so I was very focused on my golf, seeing where that was going to take us as well. So yeah, probably full of excitement for the world, I should imagine at 16.
Uh, Golf. Go on, talk to me about the golf. What was?
So I played golf from about 4 years old. So my dad wrote the history of ladies golf and he reported on it for a newspaper. So I actually was a mad keen footballer. And that's all I wanted to do was play football, play sports. And I got a little bit injured and I was hanging around with my dad when he was reporting on an event and they were like, she's quite good. And so I actually ended up playing for Lancashire Girls at golf. I won a Northern Girls competition. We won a Pro-Am on Sky Sports on a tour, Pro-Am Sky Sports, when I was about 11, 12. So yeah, I was getting to the end of my junior career probably at that point and just enjoying it, enjoying playing rather than sort of the focus on competition. I still play now. Um, so yeah, that was a little bit about me as 16.
Oh, very good. And I've just realised I completely forgot to even do any kind of introduction. Which is, I'm not. I was just saying to Steph before we came on. I'm not. I'm feeling a bit bunged up and sorry for myself today. So yeah, that's a bit of a faux pas on my front. But do you just want to quickly introduce yourself, Steph, in terms of who you are and what you do?
Yeah, so my name is Stephanie Crane. I'm delivery for T-level programs at the Association of Colleges. So my role is to support providers, and I've been doing this role for about the last 5 years now, with the implementation of T-levels. So I lead quite a large team of mainly ex-strategic leads within different provider types. So that gives us nice breadth and depth of colleagues who can support schools, UTCs, but also colleges and sixth forms with the implementation of this brand new qualification called T levels that's been developed in partnership and driven very much by employers to meet the skills needs of the future. So that has been my professional life for about the last 5 years, with some interludes in between, which we'll probably talk about a little bit today.
Mm. Yeah, and we'll get a bit more into the T level side of things as we progress. So go on, tell me then, when you left school at 16, what did you do at that point? What was your next steps?
So I knew from being about 9, 10, I wanted to be a PE teacher. I remember I was actually thinking about, just from our conversation today, being on an escalator and telling my dad I was going to be a PE teacher at about 9, 10 years old. Yeah, that was little Steph, quite determined. And so my GCSE choices were very focused upon that, and I did very well, and then moved to A levels, which is kind of the traditional route, isn't it? Um, and that seemed the natural progression to go to sixth form, and so yeah, I moved to sixth form. Then, as I say, knew very much what I was determined at that point to know what I wanted to do. Didn't really think very much after when I got to be a PE teacher, but I definitely knew that's where I was going. And so I actually did a 3-year degree at that time was available that combined both a degree and doing your teaching qualification at the same time. So I was in um, providers teaching from 18. I was still 18 when I was just started university, and we were already doing teaching practice. So it was quite a full-on course. And it's obviously very, if you had to know what you wanted to do from that point, and they were quite selective because of that. But yeah, I was very determined that I wanted to do that route into education. So yeah, that's what I did.
Yeah, and it's so when you would have been 20, what was it, 3-year degree
3-year degree, yeah,
with the placement within it?
yeah,
Yeah, where did you do your
yeah.
placement?
So there was a placement every single year. So I did one like 18, 19, 20, and then started teaching 21. Yeah. So depending on when your birthday was, it was really full on. And quite a lot when you were only sort of 18, 19 and
Mm.
teaching, going back into school and teaching 16, given that responsibility. Um, and what the nice thing about the 3-year one was that it sort of builds up. So you had sort of more observational roles, but it's also gave you the time and the breadth and depth to see different educational settings as well. So you were going to do a couple of weeks in the primary, you would go into a sixth form, so you could see both ends of the educational spectrum that led into your specialist area. So, which was really nice. I'm not actually 100% sure if they still do that as an option. I think it's obviously much more traditionally is that you do the PGCE route post degree and do the additional year. I know there's teach first opportunities as well that on the job training post degree. But yeah, this was quite unique in that it was a combined degree and at the same time you were expected to do your QTS qualifications on top of it. So yeah, it was very full on. You had to be committed, but yeah, I was very determined that that's what I wanted to do at the same time.
And quite young. I mean, I always find that quite fascinating because, when people go through that PGCE and start work in a school, a high
Mm,
school at 21,
yeah.
that must have been challenging.
Yeah, I remember walking into that GCSE group and just thinking there's not a hell of a lot of age gap between me and them. And to get that respect, you've got to be, pretty confident and credible with them. And taking a GCSE class at that point, you've only just been through it a couple of years ago yourself. Whether that's a plus, probably possibly, because you come with that experience of having studied the program. Um, but yeah, I remember it being a bit like, when you go on your first driving lesson and then you pass your test and being in the classroom and being like, this is my responsibility now. Like this is what it is. Then yeah, but I think some people are more able to in a place of maturity to do that than others possibly. And I was given some advice. I remember a previous teacher said to me, "Go and see the world before once you get into school, then you'll quickly develop into roles and other career opportunities." And he was like, "Oh, go and see the world before that." I didn't take that advice, but possibly I should have done. So
um, so you then start. So, what was your first job within education? That was what was that role, and what were you doing?
yeah, so I was a PE teacher. I was a PE teacher in a school in Cumbria, and I absolutely loved it. I've still got in my office here the first netball from the cohort that I took all the way through. So I took them from year 7 all the way to year 11. And so I did 6 years in Cumbria, and then after 1 year, I did some more of a lead teacher role in sort of quality assurance, which was quite a large responsibility, even as I was only 22 at that point, to be taking on the responsibility. Um, but yeah, I just loved it. I thrived. Was very lucky to do well in inspections and have a fantastic cohort and actually have a really good team around me though as well. I'm still in contact with my first manager from there, and um I think having a really nurturing environment and leadership environment is really important in a young person's career. I remember, being told it's okay, it's okay to, if everything isn't always perfect, but let's talk it through. And every day isn't going to be perfect. Every lesson isn't going to be perfect. It's iterations and development, and you can deliver one lesson with one group and it goes absolutely amazing, and then the next day the same lesson with another group just isn't going to work. And so it was a learning curve in that way. But I think teaching is about relationships and fundamentally, um, and having that strong relationships to support students to do their best, and that's a large amount of buy-in and buy-in, but also curriculum, exciting curriculums are part of that, and probably all those elements fed into this journey which the career has been.
Mm. And I think I do a lot of work to support colleges to recruit engineers that may not be aware of that they can go into these into these roles. And I say to them all the time that it's not, the teaching and the, is obviously that's a big part of it, but it is that being able to kind of be someone that they respect, that they listen to, how they do listen to you, don't they? And the way that you can impart your knowledge and experience onto them, as that pastoral side, that's something that I really enjoyed when I was
Yeah.
lecturing at a college.
Yeah.
And it's probably a part of the job that's not probably understood as much, I'd say.
Yeah, I think that probably I ended up becoming a personal development lead within the college, which is quite a natural progression, I would say, probably for a PE teacher, because if you think about the way the attributes that people in sport have, such as leadership and teamwork and communication, then it's all that understanding of it's people centered. And so that sort of made sense to me to want to do that. And exactly what you said, that's why we always try to bring in employers into sessions, because actually it brings the curriculum to life and it gives
Mm.
aspiration, and they always get much more buy-in from students when you have someone external come in who's been there, done that, and it's you only know what you know. And so a large part of that culture capital is developing that knowledge. And so, as you say, about bringing employers in and yourself going in and showing enlightenment about what opportunities are in there in engineering, as an example, if you've only known the engineering opportunity that your parents have done, do you think that's the only aspect of engineering that is engineering to you? And so a large part of education and things like the T level and T level foundation year is about getting that breadth and depth of understanding, and the Gatsby benchmarks do a lot of work in that way. But I think that's a crucial part of a young person's journey in trying to enlighten what opportunity is there through those opportunities that a college or a provider can offer.
Mm. You mentioned there the Gatsby benchmarks. Now, the Gatsby benchmarks is a funny one because I've seen it implemented well, and I've seen it implemented with an interpretation of how you could, so what one about, encounter with an employer. And, I've witnessed some schools just getting someone in to do a 10-minute talk in assembly, and then suddenly everyone in that room's had an encounter with an employer. So it's, those things are put in place and there's good intentions with them, but not always well delivered.
I think that's a nice thing about the T level, what we'll always say, and that's what really captivates me and captivates a lot of students. If you go and speak to the students, they will always tell you about their industry placement. And that's the number, you say, tell me a little bit about your course. Well, I've been to this employer and I've done this in this employer setting, and they will tell you all about their industry placement, and that's a huge draw for them. And I think any interaction with an employer is beneficial because it can give that enlightened moment of, wow, that's something new and I want to go and do that. However, the more involvement we talk about, um, it takes, if it takes a community to raise a child, it takes a community to deliver a T level, and be that college community, the employers around that college, the environment, the local environment, because the more involved that you can get employers in the delivery, the design, the development of that curriculum to that institution, it becomes a much more thorough and much more enlightening experience for that student about opportunities and progression and development for them. and actually meets employers' needs and local needs and gives them opportunities on their career as well. So it's about that wraparound, holistic approach to employer interaction, which I think everyone's intent is, and the more that we can do that, the better.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I mean, when I was working at college and you would be delivering to full-time level three students, sometimes they weren't that engaged and they didn't always want to be there. But as soon as an employer came in, or as soon as there was something like that, that just kind of made them realize, actually, this is why I'm on this course,
Yeah.
to aspire to do that. And I mean, we'll get a bit more into the T levels in a minute because in terms of what they're comprised of and
Yeah.
how that works. Um, and I'm not saying that the kind of like just a 10-minute discussion
No.
with an employer isn't good, because it is, and
Yeah. No.
I'm
Yeah.
not knocking schools about that, but I think the more that can be done and really encouraging. And I think sometimes with employers, I mean, schools and colleges can sometimes struggle to establish links with employers. And I've had this conversation a number of times on this podcast that I don't think employers necessarily understand the benefits of developing links with educational establishments. But if done correctly, that's a talent pipeline direct into their
Ah.
business.
In fact, yeah, 1000%. That's completely, there's that community value in the enrichment to your organization that it can bring, mentoring opportunities that develop your workforce. But also, we are in a skills shortage situation in some areas, most definitely. And this is a phenomenal talent pipeline linking with your local provider, institution, um, to develop the young people with the skills, knowledge, behaviours that you need to thrive and your business to thrive. Then that is a huge opportunity that I think more and more employers are seeing. And I think if you look at from an educational point of view, the way that the landscape has gone within post 16 education, most definitely. Employer engagement and interaction being much more interlocking and entwined has become more and more relevant. So definitely, I think that if that's a message from that lands from this podcast, it's please, if you're an employer and you think you can give opportunity, we know that employers struggle with capacity sometimes. Everyone does, most definitely. But if you are looking to develop and also think about where does your knowledge sit within your organization. We know within certain sectors that knowledge predominantly sits within, say, the over 50s. And then thinking about, as you said, that talent pipeline, can those give back and develop and nurture the talent of the future? And actually your employees will gain so much from that experience as well. There's opportunities, as we say, for leadership development, mentoring that come out, and actually new ideas and invigoration that come with taking on a young person and giving that opportunity, be it T levels, apprenticeships, work experience, or just going into a college.
Mm. Um, yeah, I mean, 100%. And I think that sometimes there's a bit of a misconception about young people leaving education and being work ready. Now, when I was engaged working in education, I used to see, and I say young people, from school leavers to college leavers to kind of university leavers, that are absolutely dynamite, like red hot. This person is going to be a future leader, 100%. And I think that sometimes people think of a young person and they think, uffing and puffing, turning up late on the phone and things like that. And, you get that with adults. I don't think
Yeah.
that's unique to a certain kind of age group. But what's your thoughts on that in terms of utilizing a younger talent pool and
I think there's a couple of things, isn't there? So we've talked about how young I was when I first went into teaching, and someone had to give me an opportunity. And I remember thinking that at the time I was going for interviews to be a teacher at 21, and I thought someone needs to give me an opportunity because yes, I had done my work experience and my work placements and within provider settings, but the proof comes to when you get that opportunity and you can give back to that employer and prove that you're a good employee and take on that responsibility and do a great job, which I hope I did in those circumstances. So it's about giving everyone needs an opportunity at some point, is what I would say. And is it a risk? Not necessarily, because as you just said, like I can think back, I've been in a college only last week, And the young people there were phenomenal. I would employ them in an instant. They were already working within a hospital setting, doing care support. And so really don't overlook that capability and adaptability that a young workforce can give you in the roles that you have. I think there's an opportunity with that to actually nurture that talent as well. So yes, they can come with the fundamental skills, knowledge, behaviors that a provider can give them, but also it's about nurturing them to your own employer needs as well. And we see a lot of that as well, particularly in, say, the digital, like software packages, or probably within engineering, the specifics to that organization's needs. Um, but yeah, they they come with this huge talent and confidence, and everyone's different. That's not everyone that's coming out. But I did quite a lot of the panel work recently for a qualification, and all the employers actually said, interestingly, regardless of the industry, the same things back. They said that they wanted people who were employable. They actually said they could nurture the skills in them as long as they came enthusiastic, on time, ready to work, ready to give the best. And I think that's exactly the same as any employee that you look for. Um, so yeah, I think it's about not underestimating and giving opportunity, and seeing this as a huge opportunity where that resource pool is there and ready to go coming out into the workforce. And there's so many different opportunities now than when we spoke about when me, I saw A levels as my natural progression. That is still an option for a young person, but there's those T levels, there's degree apprenticeships, there's apprenticeship opportunities. And so also employers looking about, okay, could I take a student on a short placement, a industry placement, a apprenticeship, a degree apprentice, and developing and continuing that journey, or also your workforce coming back into education as well and upskilling at the same time. So I
Mm.
hope that opened that question. I think I went off on a bit of a tangent there,
No,
but
no,
I think it's
not at all.
um, absolutely these students are work ready. They are on the beginning of their career journey, but phenomenal. Like honestly, one of the young people there just blew me away so much that we've invited them to come and be at the National Learn event that's upcoming. And I think it's scary. I thought I'll be out of a job, but that's not a bad thing. They were confident. Um, what they'd been exposed to already at only 18 years old it was this hospital setting they're actually telling me all about, um, and just phenomenal resilience, but also care and empathy, and it's those qualities that the employers on the panel were saying that they wanted and desperately needed, and they have them. So yeah,
Mm.
take that chance on a young person if you can.
Yeah, and I think important to add on that, they're all the things that don't come through on a CV. So
Mm.
when someone looks at a CV and discounts it because it's a young person with limited experience, actually they don't know who that person is. And it's about giving these young people a chance to shine in an arena that allows them to do that, rather than putting them through an unfair process, which you would do for a more mature person as well.
I think that's why the students value that industry placement so much, in fact, is because it gives them an opportunity to, if you've gone into an area, a technical area that you're interested in, it be it engineering, be it health. So the ambition at education, the drive and ambition is there for that area, and you want to do it. They're quite practical areas as well. And so it gives the opportunity for the individual to demonstrate the competencies that they have, which necessarily with other qualifications wasn't there. And so I think that's why they enjoy the industry placement so much, because we're both from, education, but also sport and engineering backgrounds, and we love demonstrating. We're quite kinesthetic people, and so giving the young people the opportunity to do the integration actually gives them that opportunity to talk about the competencies that they can demonstrate.
Mm.
And that is so important, to be able to get that opportunity of work or talk about in an interview what they've done. I said when we go and speak to them, the first thing they tell me about without fail is their industry placement, because and how phenomenal if they can go into an interview now and say, well, I've done this, this, and this already in the NHS, or I've done this, this, and this in an engineering environment. Then they've already proved that they've got the competencies, and they come with a reference. And a lot of the employers, I'll be really honest, are keeping the students and trying to give them opportunities.
Yeah, and once you've got that person, you will find an opportunity for
Yeah,
them, and it allows them to be a bit more creative. I always think that apprenticeships are fantastic. They're really, really, really great way of introducing someone into the organisation, but they're not the only way of introducing a young person into that organisation.
yeah,
For some employers, an apprenticeship doesn't work for them because of they don't have, there's a standard that doesn't fit, or the way they work, or whatever that can be. But
yeah,
with the T levels, um, and being able to see someone, bringing someone in as like a trainee or
yeah,
junior engineer or anything like that, put them on an internal training program that can fast track them to become what you need them to be, and I think that's a real golden opportunity, um, for employers to better engage where they might not necessarily traditionally use apprentices.
yeah. No, definitely, and it's where it fits with that skills landscape. Um, and we'll probably talk about that a little bit more. But that's why I took the role, the seconded role in the department, because it allowed me to look at where that jigsaw all fits together and have that breadth and depth landscape of the skills landscape to enable opportunity and the flow through in different areas and the levers that was available to enable opportunity for young people, but also adults coming back. Lifelong learning entitlement has come in, and so yeah, it just allowed me to see where everything fits together. Having been quite narrow in one specialist area, it was a phenomenal opportunity to see that and see where that fits nationally with our structure of development and talent development in a post-COVID, post-Brexit landscape.
And we'll come on to that. We'll come on to that shortly. But so in terms of, because I know we're kind of jumping in and mentioning T levels here, but in terms of your role as delivery lead for T levels, what are some of your key responsibilities, and what challenges do you face in that role?
So I've been described as having a healthy obsession with T levels. It's a healthy obsession and skills. So T levels has been my life for about the last 5 years now. That includes the T level foundation program, which is the prerequisite year for students who have the ability, have the ambition, yet are maybe not quite ready for the T level. And so my role is as delivery lead is for the support programs for the Department for Education. So we support providers with the implementation of T levels within their organisation. So we work very much at a strategic focus, um, and that's, as I say, the whole provider community, the geographic community is involved with that delivery of that T level or T level foundation year. Because it means, as you said, getting employers involved to deliver those industry placements, but also develop the content and the curriculum to make it really engaging for a young person. The more employer engaged it can be. These are qualifications designed by employers fundamentally. And so they're very much focused upon having the knowledge, skills, behaviours, competencies that employers need and want, and for those students to thrive in that labour market. They're different in the way they're delivered. They're delivered in a much more holistic approach because of that. And so the industry placement should allow the student then to develop not just skills, technical skills, but also, as we've spoken about on here, um, personal development goals and skills as well. That might be an opportunity within an employer environment for them to develop. So students set themselves goals on placement and then that agreed with the employer that they can develop and hone in that environment. So my role very much supports providers with that. I lead, as I say, quite a large team of strategic advisors who's probably been in previous leadership roles within provider settings, or currently maybe we even have one member of staff who's still within a school, um, who's implemented T levels, and so gives that huge amounts of wealth and value to providers coming on board within those settings. Each provider, which there is hundreds now across the country, um, we support 2 years out for T levels and 1 year out for T level foundation program. They have an advisor who works with them, who's available to them 5 days a week within working hours. We also have a hotline. We have a number of events throughout the year. We've actually got two large scale national learning events coming up, where people come together and share knowledge, good practice, understanding about their journeys with T levels with each other, which I think has been a huge part, particularly with the early adopters of T level being able to share and cascade their knowledge and experience of delivering them. And we also that's a large part of our work, trying to get providers to mentor and share good practice together, because actually they're the ones doing it. And so they know, they can see ahead, having now been on that journey, the challenges that could be faced or will be faced, and giving that knowledge to others. So we're very much the conduits of that. Um, it's about also, as I say, trying to bring together providers to share their experiences to hone future policy, feedback, because actually this has been a developmental process after 5 years, and we ask a lot of providers to say, has this worked well? How has this worked well? We want to constantly have that communication with them, and we try to make sure that we are the conduits of that and that they feel supported and in having that option. Um, Other than that, we also do things like newsletters. We hold Padlets for providers to share their main resources, but fundamentally, we are there as the support to the strategic lead, but also the leadership team within a provider to deliver those T levels and T level foundation year, and we stay with you on that journey. So for 1 year afterwards, we continue that conversation, but then we still are in really close contact actually with some providers who are in wave one, um, because it doesn't stop that relation. And we talked about relationships being absolutely fundamental all the way through, and that relationship doesn't stop. So we are still available to have those conversations with. And so this has come up. Has anyone else come up for anyone else? And we have those conversations as well. Um, so yeah, I work with a phenomenal team. They are absolutely amazing, and we're all, I think, because of the type of organisation we work for, um, we're all of a similar mindset that we just want to do our very best to support providers, because we know how hard their jobs are, how time constrained their jobs are, to enable them to do the best job that they can fundamentally, so the student can have the best experience on the qualification as they can.
And it's a, I mean, there's been a lot of educational reforms, and you see things that are happening, and I know there's a push at the moment from the government to try and encourage engineers that are working in industry to come and work part time. And I hear
Yeah.
things like that, and just like, oh God, that's going to be very difficult to kind of to facilitate that. But then something like T levels does feel like actually this is the right way to do things. It gives providers challenges. Definitely, I think that for me, getting where you've had kind of, you might have had someone who's been doing a lecturing job and doing that for many years, and they're in BTEC mode where it's all assignments, and you can control that to a certain extent. Then something like T levels is a lot more dynamic and a lot more rigorous. So very beneficial for the student, but I would imagine can be challenging for providers.
Yeah, it's a change. It's a fundamental change, and we talk about employer engagement. It's a qualification that actually is very fitting with, as we say, that post 16 um, concept of much more employer engagement driven um, landscape of opportunity for young people. But that does come with challenges. Employer engagement, particularly with some organisations thinking about, if you have large volumes of students on qualifications, you need quite a lot of placements, and that's been a real change. And as we spoke about, it's not just the placements, it's the involvement in employers, even in design. Providers get employers involved in interview of courses. So some employers actually will interview the young person coming onto the course before they've even got onto the T level, and they offer them a placement at the time of enrolment on the interview. Um, it's a very focused course and what we spoke about, and what the good thing about employer engagement is, it makes the student really knowledgeable if they're making the right choice for them. Is engineering right for them? And so the more that the employers can give a realistic understanding about what that career path is going to look like, then they can make a more informed choice. Right student, right course is what we constantly say. But it is challenging. We talked about the delivery of a T level being different. It is different. It's much more holistically delivered, because there's this concept of technical development that's it's throughout, and that you come back to technical skills that you need to progress and development, but also you need to get a student ready to be out in industry for quite a substantial 40 days. So the student needs to be ready to go out onto that placement and be in that environment as well, and that's their personal development. Confidence, work readiness skills need to be honed and developed that you'll need to look at in that curriculum, um, as well as all the elements such as risk assessments, readiness that goes into it. And that's a huge team that supports a student on that journey, that takes fundamental strategic changes. And a lot of the work we do, we actually developed, well, I say we, because the first wave of providers developed a project management online tool called a T-level planner that basically ask a strategic lead what questions they should be asking within their institution, and it's phenomenal. It's phenomenally beneficial because it's basically like a checklist of, have I done this? Have I got a revised employer strategy in place that's going to develop me this amount of placements in the next 5 years and this amount of employer relationships? What work? People are having things like tea parties to try and get employers just into their environment and seeing what the college does, and that's had wider benefits than just the T-level. Having spoken to a strategic lead last week, he was saying how it's moved along their employer strategy because they've had to think about employer involvement much more. And then they thought, well, why am I just doing it in this area? Let's get employer boards in for every area. So yeah, actually the challenges are there, but actually I think now people are hugely seeing the output, which is a great experience that the students are having, and we are seeing quite significant increases on the amount of students that are participating in these courses, and the rollout has obviously continued because it was a phased rollout of T levels.
So, like, looking ahead, what do you hope for the T level kind of programs within? How do you see this developing? Do you think it's going to snowball? Do you think there's going to be, in terms of the future of technical education, what do you think is going to happen, or what would you like to see happen going forward?
I think we're getting to a place of real pride. Like when I meet those students, it's phenomenally moving because when we started this journey, the pandemic was in place. So I never really got to, I was doing all this work in the background to get this new qualification out there and support providers with delivering it. And it's when you see those students that you know that you're doing something right, and they're phenomenal. And so I think they will speak for themselves. And the more students that study a T level and go into employer settings, we've seen employers such as Lloyd's Banking Group, who's massively increased the amount of T level students year on year that they're taking because they've had such success with their first cohorts that they've continued, and they see that as a real jigsaw piece in, as we've spoke about, their employer strategy, employee development strategy, and talent resourcing strategy. It makes financial sense for a lot of employers, as we said about a recruitment pipeline, that they're saving on recruitment costs because they're developing that talent themselves. So I believe it will only increase. The amount of T levels that are going to become available is going to increase with future rollout. We are seeing more and more students every year studying T levels, and then we will get to a steady state position where they are fully implemented, fully rolled out. Students across the country have the opportunity to study them. And I think we'll see some phenomenal talent out in the industry as a consequence of that. Already seeing that, say from the conversations that I had last week, they're making such an impact in the environments and the work settings that they're in. It's amazing to see. So aspirations are definitely that it will continue. We will see an increase in the amount of students studying them, the opportunity to study them, and yeah, it's looking really, really positive. And I think from, if you think about, we talk about the A level being the grandfather of qualification, grandparent of qualifications. I'm going to say grandparent of qualifications because they're over 70 years old, I believe. This is what someone else has told me, and that T levels are pretty much the toddler when it comes to that. We're 3, 4, 5 years into this journey, and when you think about the distance that we've already gone, it's phenomenal. Um, and that doesn't stop us looking forward and the progression and the work that we need to do, but it's a real sense of achievement that providers should feel for how far we've come in such a short amount of time.
And the thing with A levels is, A levels are great, and A levels are for the academic, those that are looking at going on to definitely go to university. They're a good qualification. You know, the rigor you get within them, no one can doubt that. But can potentially be a little bit one dimensional with that progression pathway. You know, they are not. They are pure. You tend to be purely academic. There's not a lot of collaboration with employers usually.
Yeah,
Um,
the nice thing about the T levels, it's a balance. So you're still able to go to university and progress onto university, and I think there's much more awareness now from HEIs regarding what T levels are, and that wasn't always necessarily there, and that's not a criticism. This was a new qualification, new for everyone, and so an understanding is growing and growing. And actually about the difficulty of the content and the rigor of the T levels, that understanding is being more and more acknowledged. And so it sort of gives you, if you fancy a technical um, route, and I think other countries do, we talk about parity, don't we, of technical when it comes to technical and academic. You know, engineers particularly are extremely valued both in this country, but in other countries even more highly valued
mm,
potentially, the qualifications that come to them. Um, then I think there's that opportunity for a young person to not just go, like my route was directly to the A level. I didn't really see that there was other options for me as a in the career that I wanted to go down. For young people now, we've created an alternative opportunity where I think it's I think it's enabling, because if you think about, if you wanted to become an engineer, previously you'd go to your A levels, you'd do your degree, whereas if you do the T level, there's a real chance. We have us at Runshaw College, they were telling me about students they've got in BAE at 17, 18 years old. Like, what a phenomenal opportunity that they have to be in that environment, to be learning in that environment, to be demonstrating their competencies in that environment. It's enabling, and that can lead to a whole different enlightenment of career for that young person that they would never have had if they'd just gone that traditional A level route, because they wouldn't have been in an industry placement in BAE at that point. So it's opportunity enabling. The concept of education for me, its values is, my dad used to say that if you have a qualification, no one can ever take it away from you, and that's the value of an education, that you have that skills, you've got those competencies, and you can always demonstrate them, and that's a real passport ticket to opportunity and a means of earning and thriving and development. So to have that qualification and to have the experience, it's a phenomenal opportunity that I don't think a lot of people previously may have had as much of.
so you alluded to earlier about your secondment to the Department for Education as a skills strategy lead. How did that come about, and how did that experience shape your kind of understanding and perspective on the wider need for the development of skills?
Yeah, so I was lucky enough that there was an advert that went out, and I was made aware of it. I saw it, and so I thought, "Do you know what, that is something that I never thought I would get the opportunity to do." Let's be honest, I was a PE teacher. I've been a strategic lead within a college in that personal development role, a curriculum lead, and it was very much on a pathway of education. And then I got the role that I'm currently in, doing that national policy implementation. But I'd never really had the chance to do strategy work and looking at policy making. And so when I saw it, I thought, this is one of those moments where I thought I can just always apply. What have you got to lose by applying? This is an opportunity to add value. Because I think a lot of our role, which I've spoken previously about, is trying to bring providers more to having a say in feedback and being in that loop. That's very much important to me as a part of the role that we do, that we bring together providers to have a say. And the really nice thing about the T-level foundation year is that providers, it was an upwards policy the way it was made, so providers actually had the flexibility to develop a program that enables students to get onto the T level, and we took their feedback and we saw commonalities that appeared, and so that is what drove that policy development, the providers themselves input. So having been a provider myself, I thought, well, that's a fantastic opportunity and I think I can make a difference. And I was lucky enough, having been through the recruitment process for that, to get that opportunity to be seconded. Um, and I've never been a civil servant, so it was a real eye opener for me, because I had to learn a load of new skills really, really quickly. having felt really competent and confident being in colleges and schools my entire life, I was then the newbie who was learning how to be just general civil service tasks such as response to questions and the way that they have their own. I would laugh and say that sometimes colleges have their own vocabulary and languages, and civil servants have their own vocabulary and languages. And so I was on a really pretty steep learning curve for about the first 2 months in there. Um, but it was amazing. I enjoyed every minute. They were open to. They gave me full open, input into ensuring that providers had a say. Um, and yeah, I got to help develop looking at that 2030 white paper strategy of the future of the skills landscape. So very much looking at things like LSIPs and what that looks like. What do we need, as we say, in a post-Brexit, post-COVID landscape to enable us as an economy and us as a country to thrive? And part of that is young people and development of young people, but also aspects such as the lifelong learning entitlement and coming back in and maybe we don't do as much as that as other countries do of developing older talent as well and enabling people to come back into education and how that all fits together and loops together was my role of looking at that big landscape and the levers that we can pull to enable more people to get that opportunity to gain skills that's needed in the workforce.
And yeah, I think you're totally right about that. I think that in terms of being able to take people that are maybe looking to switch careers or things like that, if we just took engineering and manufacturing as an example, I used to, when I was at college, I remember I used to teach an evening CAD course. And there were about 15, 18 people on that course. And there were people in there that were really good. They were just good at CAD. They just started doing it and they were good. They weren't engineers, but they were interested in it and they were doing it as a way of hopefully being able to then become a design engineer. I knew that they had zero chance of becoming a design engineer because no engineering company will take somebody on like that. They want experience. Whereas I'm there as an engineer at the front thinking, if someone just gave this person a chance, and they allowed them to grow within that role, they would be able to do that job. Um, and it's a real shame. I think for some jobs and some sectors, it's very, very hard to get in there if you don't have those skills and experience. Other sectors are better at it, but some are not good at it, and that contributes to the alleged skill shortage because I don't think there is. There is a shortage of skills if you look at experienced, competent, ready to hit the ground running people. But if you're looking at capable, intelligent people, they're everywhere. Do you know what I mean?
It's that talent enablement, isn't it? And that's
Mm.
what you have to look within. Do we have the alignment between industry and providers and the educational landscape to enable that alignment, to enable talent to thrive? And that's what we would look at that larger landscape of levers, of it be apprenticeships. So a lot of apprenticeship actually, companies that existing workforce take up those apprenticeships to enable them, because actually things like funding come massively in. The older you get, you have responsibilities that, can you go back to university, or can actually workforce continue to work in the workforce and do that at the same time? And so apprenticeship opportunities in that way. And so we would work through what were the blockers and barriers, and we would I was very lucky to be in a team that would pull together and have that oversight over and call in the experts in that area and say, okay, what are the blockers? We're hearing from this industry that there's a blocker here. What can we do about this? And we would test and try and look at that landscape of that golden thread all the way through to enable talent, because actually that's what we're talking about here. I think I agree with you. The talent is there. I think that's completely the point. But it's about how can we enable those to get the skills and the qualifications that they need to keep going through that ladder of opportunity, be that coming back into the workforce or starting at the journey of their career, be it for T levels. I think that starts a little bit earlier as well, because we talked about careers advice and guidance. Young people, even earlier than 16, need really fundamental careers advice and guidance about opportunities in engineering. What is out there for them, and you don't know what you don't know, do you? And so
Mm.
we would even look at careers advice and guidance and what, starting that really, really early, because we need more people to know about the opportunities in these different sectors where they need talent. So yeah, every bit of that journey was our role to look at how we can enable everyone who has the potential to get to where they want to be,
Yeah,
regardless of age or skills or current position. How can you get to a person in this whole mechanism, the levers that we can pull to enable that to happen?
yeah, and I think you touched on it right at the beginning with the T levels, and I think you can say that with everything. It's about a community. It's about that support and everyone being involved to ensure that that happens. Because that CAD class that I was teaching, if you'd have had some employers stood at the front, and I could have said, "Look, go and have a look at them. Go and look at what they're doing. You're after, you need somebody within your business. Would you not give them a go?" They would have said yes. They would have
Yeah.
talked to them. They would have given them an opportunity. So that enablement, that is what's missing, I think. But that can be, and that maybe links back to employer relationships and establishing links with education, so they understand it a little bit more and they can see who these individuals are that are re-engaging with education.
Yeah, if you're an employer listening to this, my absolute thing that I want to land is you don't have to offer an industry placement. I would love it if you did, or an apprenticeship, but get involved with your local provider. Be a guest speaker. Can you have a look at the curriculum and add, because you can add value to that curriculum. We've even talked about they do days like coming in and just doing a skill day. That's quite common within construction firms. And one challenge we've actually had is that you just said that they've come in and they've done like a skills test day, and they want that talent there and then. And so it's the provider working with the employer to say, we just need them to finish this part of the qualification and then they're ready for you, because that actually will make you an even better employee. But how can you get involved and enable that opportunity to go and have a look at this workforce that's in there? And as you said, if they've been in that class, they would have taken that talent without a shadow of a doubt.
Yeah, and I think lots to be done on that front. But I mean, look, Steph, I think I could talk all day to you. I think you've been, you've been such a great guest, and I think we're very well aligned with our kind of um, vision of what this could be, because this could, we could be really good in this country at aligning skills. But anyway, I just wanted to end with the last question was just talking about your ambitions. So, what ambitions do you have left? Either, well, both personally and professionally. So, I don't know if the golfing's going to be taken back up again, and whether you're going to be on, where we're going to see on the big screens,
I
or
think
what?
those days are maybe over in the golfing ambitions. Maybe one day when I retire, I might get to be a lady captain somewhere. Who knows? Maybe that would be an ambition. Um, I think it's a really hard question, isn't it, always? But I think as long as long as I stick true to the values which I believe in, and that's what we've talked about during this podcast about enabling opportunity for young people, um, learning, being a real enabler to people, and that being something that I'm passionate about. And I've never really, I think we've heard from sort of the career journey, other than being a PE teacher, which I was absolutely, utterly obsessed with becoming. As long as you're continually seeking to support that landscape of education of opportunity for everyone, then I'll be very happy. And where that'll take me, I'm not 100% sure. At the moment, I'm very happy with T levels, and I'm going to be here on this journey for quite some time. Um, but then after that, that is my passion, and that is where I will always try to try and add value. And I think shifting that landscape of knowledge of young people about opportunities available wider than what they know will be my focus and priority.
Okay, excellent. Well, Steph, thank you very much for your time today. Um, really enjoyed that. I thought that was a really good and a very quick 50 minutes, whatever has passed. So, yeah, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me.